Kim's going to take us through today's Thursday before the long weekend, celebrating Easter weekend this weekend. So what better way than to enter into the long weekend with some ideas about how to appreciate the land and the culture that we are exploring on the daily now, with so much time spent at home and with our families, maybe talking about the rituals and family traditions that all of a sudden become more important for us. So Kim, thank you for doing this. We look forward to, like, we have 4 active children, so any kind of tips and tricks to keep them engaged will be well appreciated in the Jed's household, but I think also for everybody tuning in and sharing out after. So over to you.
Okay, thanks, Martha. So before I jump into the PowerPoint that I'll be sharing with you guys, I thought about how to kind of share some of the things that happen in our area, and I thought I would tap into something that happened just recently around here, and it happens in quite a few places, and it's called putting up ice or ice up, and it happens in my family. And it also happens at different camps around here, and it's quite a neat process where what happens is they cut a giant hole in the ice and they take out big chunks, and they store it so it lasts until the end of the summer. So I'm going to start talking about that first because it is an Indigenous tradition in my family. For the fisheries that we have, and then as well, I know, like I mentioned, some other camps use it just for their own, like, freezer and to keep their food and stuff cold. So I'm going to go ahead and share my PowerPoint. I have some videos for us this morning. Martha, if you could just let me know when you can see.
Yes.
Okay, so I'm just going to talk about, like I mentioned, land-based learning this morning.
Camera's off. I just turned it up. How are you, sir?
All right, and for those of you who don't know, I'm Kim Kirk, and I work for 7 Generations Education Institute as well as Fair Chance Learning. And you can catch me on Twitter at KimKirk20.
There's 100 people watching this conference.
So I chose this picture, and I talked about it before. I like the inspire, empower, transform quote because I think that's a lot about what we do in our work as educators. We try and inspire kids, we try and empower them, and we try and transform what we're doing. And then the little guy in the front of this picture, that's my why. That's my son. That's why I choose to work hard and I choose to do the work I do. So I live in Fort Frances, Ontario, which is between Winnipeg and Thunder Bay, and I live right on the American border. It's part of Treaty 3. And when you look on the map, I have 2 arrows pointing to 2 different bodies of water. And those bodies of water, the one on the top, that is the Lower Manitou Lake. And that is where the videos that we are watching today, that's where they come from. There's a camp up there called the Manitou Weather Station, and my dad's a guide up there. And they've shared their videos with me so that I could share this teaching or this land-based learning with you. And then the lower arrow points to Ash Bay in the north arm of Rainy Lake, and that is where my family has fisheries. So they have commercial fisheries up in the north arm. It is about a 40-minute boat ride or more from one of the regular landings that we use to get up there. So they don't have the ability to bring ice up to keep their fish cold, so they use the tradition of putting up ice every year so that they have ice on their island so that they can keep their fish cold when they catch it. I found this quote as I was kind of looking through my stuff for pictures and videos, and it says, "The best education does not happen at a desk, but rather engaged in everyday living, hands-on, exploring, an active relationship with life." And I think it's important as educators that we remember that, yes, the stuff that happens in the classroom is really important, but there is a lot of other education that can happen outside that is equally as important. And just the picture in the background is the 7 sacred medicines of the Indigenous people: tobacco, sweetgrass, sage, and cedar. And I just put that in the background because those are all things that we can, the sacred medicines that we can tap into when we are outside as well. Cedar trees are quite rampant in our area, so we can just even try and look and find those when we're out. Sage, I know it grows wild in some areas in Ontario, so if you're out and about, you can look for sage, and then even offer your tobacco and harvest it if it's in a crown land where you can harvest. So living off the land, so kind of tying land-based learning. The picture here obviously is an older picture. It's a picture of one of my family members and their commercial fishery. So you can see the big pile of net and fish, net and buoys in the boat. So they take that in the summertime and they have two markers, and usually it's like a big milk jug or a bleach container that floats in the lake. And so they have the 2 points that float, and the net is suspended underneath the water. So if anytime you're in a lake and you see 2 milk containers or 2 bleach containers floating, you know that that is a fishing net. And so commercial fishermen have their trap lines or their areas where they put their net. So my family, like I mentioned, is up in the North Arm of Rainy Lake, so they have nets there. So in the summertime, it's a lot easier, obviously, to put nets in than in the winter time. So the next picture is of a jigger board or a jigger, and it is a mechanism that goes into the hole in the ice, and it has a string attached to it. And as you pull the string, it kind of bounces forward, and it kind of goes along the ice so that you're putting a rope all the way through to the other hole, wherever however long your rope is. And then you attach your net to it and you pull it back through. So that's how your net gets into the ice in the winter time. And I still have a hard time wrapping my head around how when you pull the string, the jigger actually bounces forward. I remember being with one of my cousins up in the winter time, and he was showing me how it all worked, and he had pulled his net out first, and it was full of walleye and jackfish and some other fish that we put back into the lake, but he was just catching walleye and jackfish. And so he'd just throw them out on the ice, and then we put them into a sleigh and took them back to his camp or his cabin so he could fillet them. But then he was putting the net back in and he was using the jigger, and it just, I couldn't really understand. So I've attached a video that I'm going to show. Oh, you know what? I'm going to stop sharing my screen for a second so I can make sure that
you check the audio.
Yeah.
Perfect. That's pretty much the success that Dustin has when he fishes in the summer. He just pulls out the jackfish and the walleye and the...
That is so true, Martha. Yes.
And then he just rows it back and fillets it for us.
I have to say that I don't, I have strategically learned I have not learned how to fillet fish because I don't ever want to have to do it. So I will take the fish and I'll take it back to the lake and I'll clean it before we leave, or I'll cook it, but I don't ever clean it. And I have over the years strategically learned that. My dad is an avid fisherman and he's a guide, and he's tried to teach me for my entire life. And I strategically, can't hold the knife properly, or, I just don't cut it right. And so then he gets frustrated and I don't have to learn. So anyway, so Martha, can you see my screen again?
Yes.
Okay, so this should be a picture of, and I found it on YouTube. So it's an individual that is using a jigger, putting it in the ice, and then setting their net. And it's not in French.
Here, there's a weighted arm, which when you give the rope slack, it falls down.
We can hear them.
That's what moves the tooth.
Sorry, Martha?
We can hear it, but we can't see it.
Okay.
Do you want to try and reshare again?
Sure.
We saw your captions. We didn't see the picture, but we could hear the audio. This is looking promising.
Okay, there we go.
Perfect.
I think this is it. So you can see it?
Yeah.
There's no sound for a minute, so let me know if you can hear it.
Here,
Yes.
there's
Oh my
a
gosh,
weighted arm, which when you give the rope slack, it falls down. And that's what moves the tooth back forward underneath the ice. And when you pull on that rope, it moves that arm up, which moves the tooth back. And that's what moves the jigger forward. And the rope feeds through this little hole at the back. And it's got this little arm here, which you can, by pulling hard on the rope, you can make it click, which helps you to find the jigger underneath. And this thing is made out of wood so that it floats underneath the ice. Drop it down into the hole. Underneath the ice, and all I have to do is just pull on this rope and it walks forward. So I pull and then I give slack and the jigger moves forward. And with a bit of practice you can get this thing to fly underneath the ice and move continuously without stopping. In the winter when we're doing this with a snow cover, we can put a flashlight on the jigger. We can see it moving underneath the snow and the ice. And you can also pull harder on the rope, make it smack up against the bottom of the ice. And from that sound, you can also help locate the jigger underneath the ice. So now we got our hole. Pull the jigger up through this hole. Now we have two holes in the ice connected by a rope. And that's how we use a jigger.
So I have to say, I think my favorite part of the video is the dog running in the background, chasing the ice cube.
So cute.
So yeah, that is basically how a jigger works. And so they use that to set their net, to put their net in the wintertime. And usually so the ice where we are is significantly thicker than that. It's like probably, yeah, much thicker than that. And as well, they usually have snow cover. So my family really goes on the sound. So when he was saying that you pull the rope and it makes that kind of ticking sound. So you pull and you pull and you pull and you kind of guess where you think the jigger is going to be based on how much feet you have on your rope. And so they also have different colored ropes. So, 10 feet might be blue, and then 10 feet is red, and then 10 feet is a different color, so that they know how far that they can walk. So if they're in the blue section, then they might be 40 feet. And so then they go and they kind of clear off the snow so they can find where to put the hole to pull the jigger out. So so that's a little bit about commercial fishing and setting a net in the winter and the summertime. But for the summertime, obviously, they usually catch quite a bit of fish. And so this kind of brings us into putting up ice. So the weather station let me use this video, and it is, before I get into what it is about putting up ice, I'm just going to show you this video so you can kind of get a sense or an idea of what it looks like before I explain it. Oh, sorry. Oh.
-40 Corinne. Do you see that? great.
So that is kind of the short version of putting up ice. I know that they sorry, I know that they make it look really easy, like throwing those ice cubes around, and you just think that they're small little ice cubes, but they're actually between 80 to 100 pounds each. So when they're grabbing them and tossing them in the ice shack, it's pretty intense. So just some curriculum connections around putting ice up. Martha, can you hear me okay?
Yeah, I have so many questions. This is so cool, Kim.
Okay, well, I will take, do you want me to answer them now or go through my pictures?
No, I love your curriculum connections here because I was going to say there's so much of learning in that, what is it, a 2-minute video, if that? It's incredible.
Yeah, so obviously measurement. So when you think about, so they have the ice shack, right, where they store the ice. So you need to measure that, and you need to see how much square footage you have there, and then you have to figure out the width of your saw and how wide you're going to make that, and then how many cubes that you need. And my dad told me last night that there's 1,600 cubes that they use to fill the ice shack.
Wow.
So there's lots of measurement and math involved in there, procedural writing, right, in figuring out how this all goes, all the steps that go along it, pulleys and levers. So that one kind of ties more to my family's putting up ice. So they have a truck that they use instead of kind of throwing them onto the slide and pushing them up. They have a truck that they use. So the truck is connected to a pulley, and the truck drives forward and it pulls the ice chunk into the ice shack, and then it drives back. And so they use a pulley system to make it a little bit easier. Phys ed, obviously, and like I said, they make it look really easy just tossing those cubes around, but it's not. And then geography. So obviously this is a fly to or a boat to or a sled to camp. So they had to get there on different trails and pathways. So making sure you don't get lost. So you could teach a student how to use a compass or navigating the land. So here's just some pictures. So I'm going to kind of break it down a little bit into sections. So this is the grid, as they call it. And so what they do is they use that saw that you saw, and they kind of make it into a grid. So they have their sections, and then after the saw cuts through, they use the chainsaws to cut all the way through. So the grid kind of, I guess, in a sense, draws it out, or sorry, the saw kind of draws it out, and then the chainsaws that they use cut all the way through the ice. So depending on how much ice there is dependent on the length of the blade. So then there you're getting back into your math connections. So they cut all the way through with the saws. And then they have, this is just an aerial photo of all of the ice floating around. So you can see there's like the long poles. So as you take out cubes, obviously the ice is going to float around. And so they use the long poles to grab them and pull them to the side, and just making sure that they're being safe while they're doing this. And then out of the ice. So they're ice tongs that they use to grab the ice. And obviously a lot of people are involved in these events because it's a lot of work. So they grab the ice out, and then it's put onto a trailer. And sorry, my dog's here. Give me 1 second.
Give it a piece of ice, Kim.
Yeah, she just wanted to hang out with us. Yeah, so then they put them onto the like trailer that's attached to the snow machine, and then they haul it to the ice shack. Like I said, my family's is a bit different because the hole they cut in the ice is exactly right in front of the ice shack. So they just basically pull it out, attach it to the truck, and it slides up the ramp. And I'm going to try and get pictures of it so that I can document that as well. So there's the sleigh that they make, and it has the ice chunks on it. So when you saw the ice chunks initially, there was kind of like a little bit of snow pack on the top of it. So they cut all of that off so that it's just clear ice chunks. And then getting into the ice shack. So you can see that they're stacked. They go right to the ceiling. And it's like a little bit like Tetris. So you can get into your spatial reasoning here and who can stack the best, or who's got the best spatial reasoning based upon who can fit in the most cubes.
It's like so when Dustin and I go away and it's who packs the car, right?
Yeah.
There's certain people who are allowed to pack the trunk and certain people who are not allowed to pack the trunk because certain people have a strategy that they've used for years.
Right. Yes, right. And it's very similar. So now there's two ways to keep the ice all summer or until the next season. And so one way, and that my family covers it in sawdust, so that keeps it insulated. And then when they need it, they take it and they rinse it off and then put it into like these big tubs that they keep their fish in, and they chop it up. And so the ice lays over top of the fish to keep it cold before they can transport it back to Fort Frances to sell to like places like Red Lobster or the Winnipeg Fish Market. When it gets really hot in the summertime, they put ice underneath and above the fish. So basically, it's just making sure that they have a viable business in the summer. So the putting up ice is a really important part of keeping their business going throughout the summer. Now up at the weather station, they have a fully insulated shack. And what they do is they pack they pack snow in between all of the ice chunks, or they'll have like a piece of ice that they cut slivers of and they pack it all in. So the less air you have accessible in between the ice chunks, the longer the ice is going to last.
This gives a whole new dimension to the ice bucket challenge or the ice shack challenge.
Yeah, absolutely. And then this shack that they're filling is roughly 16 by 16 by 12.
I freaking love it.
Okay, and I'm going to jump into one more video. This is of this year, and I have to thank Carrie Lynn for this because she was working on it, and she's like, well, I'll just finish it, and then you can show this year's. So this was them putting up ice this year up at the weather station, and they've changed up things a little bit. They've gone a little bit more mechanical, I think, to make their life a little bit easier, but it's just another short video that I'll show you.
Kim, can you talk a little bit about the ice, the different colors and why they were cutting off part of it? We learned a little bit over the March break. Our son went ice fishing for the first time.
Yeah.
And he was learning a little bit about we were a little uncomfortable with knowing whether it was safe for him to go out and do this. And then his guide that was kind of informing him about the ice and the depth and what to look for. Just if you can explain a little bit about that.
Yeah, so the different layers. So the top part that they were cutting off is like usually that first freeze, and what happens is that if the temperature fluctuates at all, then it's not like really strong ice. So what they do is, and then the snow machines ride on it, or if there's animals or anything on it. So basically it's just kind of that pack down, and it's got some snow on it. So they cut that off. So that's kind of like the whiter part, I guess you could say, of the ice cube or whatever that they cut off of it. And then the clear ice is that really strong, thick ice that I don't know if you've ever been on the lake when in the cold of the winter, but you can hear the ice booming, they call it. And it's just the ice, the making the ice. And it's just kind of like, I don't know, I can't explain why it booms, but you can lay out on the ice at night and you can hear it when it first starts to gel together.
Our kids were connecting to Jumanji and those massive sounds in that movie when we were walking around.
Yeah.
But the first video you showed, the ice looked pretty thin. However, it looked that super dark piece. What, like, in your neck of the woods up there, what is kind of the recommended depth of the ice that would be kind of the last moments that you would be going on the ice for the season?
Yeah, so obviously there are all kinds of different guidelines. We play it really, really safe because it's not something that you want to risk going out on. It's not pleasant. I've even gotten a soaker in the wintertime, and it's not fun. Just getting my 1 foot wet, I was pretty miserable. So I would say, I don't know the exact guidelines, but for walking on, you definitely want more than a foot. And then there's guidelines for snow machines and quads and trucks. I don't think there's any trucks out there right now, but up until maybe a month ago, people were driving their trucks. People plow ice roads to different cabins on Rainy Lake, so lots of people drive around in their vehicles. One of the communities actually plows a community ice road, because when you drive there by vehicle on the highways, it's about an hour. But if you take the ice road in the wintertime, it cuts your drive down to only about 15 to 20 minutes.
Holy
So
smoke.
the community actually plows the ice road and keeps it going for their community members just to have a shorter commute. So that's usually the first road that's plowed is to that community. And then, yeah, but I don't actually, I'm kind of spoiled, and my dad lets me know when I can go out on the ice and when it's safe and everything. So yeah, I don't actually know those guidelines, Dustin. I'm
Love
sorry.
it. Yeah, no worries. And then lastly, just does it matter the way in which you pull those cubes out? Because it seemed like they started to pull out sections that were I think in those moments be freaking out about whether after I saw it all the areas and gridded it out, is there strategy in terms of how you pull those pieces out?
Yeah, so one thing that is like it's a day project. It's a start to finish, because once you get it all cut, if you leave it overnight, it's just going to all refreeze. So they have to make sure that they go start to finish. And so I think they only saw, like with the chainsaws, in sections. So they do the grid all the way with the big saw, like the push saw, and they kind of draw out their grid, and then they do their chainsaw in sections. And then the guys kind of balancing on it. Yeah, they're really, I don't know if you could see in the video, you could kind of see that it was waving. So they're standing on it, and they're just basically, the cubes are just not broken. So they've been sawed through, but because there's the water in there, so it's just kind of like a floating island that they're on, and they just have to be very cautious not to fall in. So yeah, I would be nervous too, and I don't know that I would take that job. But yeah, so I think they've done it for enough years that they know where they can stand, and they just kind of work their way backwards. So, you know, the saw cuts through, and then they cut through with the chainsaw, and then they break it away in sections. If that makes sense.
Awesome. Yeah, thanks.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Any other questions?
You're drawing, it's funny, land-based learning opportunities and who you draw into the conversation, right? Because, I mean, Jeff made the point, like Dustin's totally engaged and Frank keeps coming and poking his head and watching. And then Karen's husband got captured in it as well. So it obviously has the connection that it means for people to present learning opportunities like this. It's neat to see, you know, the draw of it. Super cool. There's so many things there, Kim, that are amazing.
And Willem's been fortunate. He's got to go up a couple times to my family's fishery in the North Arm, and he's put up ice a few times. Mind you, he helps and then he plays, but they also are very cautious that, you know, the kids are. He didn't go until a couple years ago because he was too young, and they just don't want that. Right? There's a massive open body of water right there, so they ensure the safety of the kids and make sure that anybody that's there is old enough and mature enough to understand the safety behind everything, and, you know, with the saws and everything going on there. But, you know, it's really cool that he gets to take part in that, and he gets to see how they live and how the fishery is so important to the family.
So how did you capture the film, like underwater and above?
So Carrie Lynn did that with a drone and a GoPro.
That's awesome.
Yeah, so they have them up at the camp, and yeah, so it's I was so thankful when she had the video to share. I was like, oh, awesome.
Yeah.
So and then I just kind of other land-based learning ideas that I have. So if you're kind of out and about in these, all you can do with social distancing as well. So finding north scavenger hunt. So, you know, you get a compass, or I mean, most of us have them on our phone. And you just kind of go for a walk, and then whoever you're with, you ask them to point their feet to which direction they think north is. I'm terrible at this. I never get it right. My dad, on the other hand, can know where north is at every second of every day, but I didn't get that gene, so I never know where north is. So that's kind of a fun way. And then, you know, you walk a little bit, and you know how your path turns and winds and weaves, and then you try and find north again, and just kind of teaching, you know, where the sun is and how you can find north. In this area, it's a good skill, right? So you know which directions you're going in. A sensory scavenger hunt, so getting people to find something that's soft and something that's prickly and something that's, you know, smooth, or something that's large or small, or certain leaves. So you can kind of get them on a sensory scavenger hunt. And then a nature memory game. So you can collect, you know, maybe like 2 rocks, 2 leaves, 2 flowers, 2 pieces of cedar, and then you put them under cups. And so you have to match the different pieces of the memory game, kind of like normal memory, but you're just using pieces from nature. The next one is building in Nookshuks. And I was kind of thinking about land-based learning, and I remembered back to, it was my first year teaching, and I was teaching in Winnipeg, and I don't know how we got it, but somebody in the classroom ended up having a whole bunch of rocks. So I built a Nookshuks with my 1, 2, 3 class, and it was really cool how, so each kid got a pile of rocks, and then they built their own Nookshuk, and we displayed them up in the library, and, you know, there was books that we related to it, and we read about it, and we learned about it. And so even as a family, just going out and building your own Nookshuk and putting it in a special place that's meaningful to you. Obviously the basics like journaling, what you see, smell, hear, touch in nature, because just being present and acknowledging all the different things that are out there. If you can sometimes just be silent and absorb what's happening. There are a lot of sounds, smells, things that you'll hear out there. Walks and meditation, obviously outside. And then my dad, I was talking to my dad last night, and he's like, remember when you boiled water in a paper bag? And I had an outdoor ed class in university, and my dad taught me how to boil water in a paper bag, and I ended up getting 100% in the class because the teacher was wicked impressed that I was able to do that. But
my eye was drawn right to that as well. And Jeff said, how do you boil water in a paper bag, Kim?
Okay, so you saturate the bag. So you start a fire and you get it going and you saturate the bag, and then you move the coals and everything around, and your bag is saturated. You put it in the middle and the fire is going on around it. And then the water in the bag will start to boil.
Okay, so you saturate the bag by soaking it in water for
you just get it wet so that it's all wet. You don't have to soak it for very long, and then you actually have water in the bag, right? So you would need some type of container to transport the water to the bag. So you get the bag all wet, and then you put it inside the fire pit, but the coals and everything are around it, so that basically you just are kind of heating it from the outside. And
wow.
So you have water in the saturated paper bag, and it will start to boil. So that could be your challenge for the weekend.
Yeah, I dig it. I mean, Jeff has a new barbecue, so he could try it on his barbecue.
Yeah. So that was one of I had to laugh because he remembered. He's like, you need to talk about boiling water in a paper bag. And I was like, Dad, I forgot about that.
That is totally an attention grabber. That's amazing.
Yeah. So, and then that's all. That's kind of all I had. I don't know if anybody has any other questions. I'm glad that you guys enjoyed learning about putting up ice. It's, it really is something that I don't know if it happens everywhere, but it definitely happens up in our area, and happens frequently for the camps, for the fisheries, for lots of people up in our area. Some people just do it for their own enjoyment so that they have ice to have their beverages on in the summertime.
Yeah, that makes sense. The only time I've seen it before is in Frozen, at the beginning of Frozen, the movie, when they're harvesting the ice or whatever. That's the only place I've seen it before. I don't know how we can thank your community for being so open to sharing with us, but on the call yesterday, we had a webinar talking about remote learning and just the ever presence of work in your home now, right? Like, just there's no separation. And so that can be really overwhelming, but when we have someone like you who's so connected to your community and your family, so willing to support the work that you're doing, and then in turn share it with us, is such a generous gift that is just amazing. Like, those videos are beautiful, and the fact that they were willing to share, and Carrie Lynn, who we haven't met, but so gracious that she was sharing that information with us is incredible. And I think we all appreciate it. And it's like you said, or like I said before, drawing people into this conversation and these learning opportunities, and to connect to nature is so important right now. I think it does give us a sense of calm. I'll show you a cute picture. Yesterday I was out with the boys and Maeve, and they made a parkour course out of a wood lot. So that was really fun.
Oh, nice.
Yeah. And Maeve was testing everything. So you said, how does it taste?
Yeah.
She could tell you how sticks taste.
Oh, yeah.
And leaves taste. And yeah, but I mean, there's something so relaxing about it. So thank you for bringing our attention to it in an intentional way. I think we'll be thinking about it and discussing it with our friends when we get an opportunity to debrief over what happened today. But it was such a nice way to wrap up this week with us. It was a little bit of a meditation, I would say, in terms of connecting and seeing the beauty of the ice and the nature in winter, and then just everybody working together with smiles and a willingness to do the grunt work, right? The hard work as a collective, and see their smiles. So thank you so much.
That community, right?
Yeah. It's so nice. Thank you for doing that.
Yeah, you're welcome. You're welcome. I'm glad to share it. And it was just neat talking with my dad last night, and him telling me more details than I remember. Right, I've been up there a few times, but I don't remember all the details. He's been part of it many times. So yeah, I obviously didn't ever use the ice tongs to take out a piece of ice, but he has, so he knew how much they weighed. And yeah, so it was neat. We just kind of connected last night and talked about it. So I told him that I was going to bring him on as my guest, and he could do all the talking, but he didn't bite.
Well, thank him for us, because He's amazing for sharing. We're so lucky to hear your stories, Kim. We're really appreciative of it.